around here. I think everything back to me again. Rudy Rutherford.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Butte-Silver Council of Commissioners Committee of the Whole meeting, October 28th, 2015. Could we have roll call, please?
11 present, 1 presiding, 0 absent.
Thank you. Could you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the prayer with Commissioner Henderson?
Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which so greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver Bowl. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Commissioner Henderson. A report of the chair, just a couple of things. I just want everyone to keep Karen Burns and her family in their prayers. Her father-in-law, Mr. Burns, passed away over the weekend. And also, you all know Harp Cody had a slip and fall yesterday. I happened to be across the street coming out of the Hennessy building, and he's one tough fella. That's all I can say. He had a cut above his eye, and he hurt his hands, and I think he didn't have any broken bones, but it was kind of scary because he was just laying on the sidewalk. And I said something to him about how he looked like he'd just been in a bar fight, and I got a laugh out of him. But he did go to the hospital, but he wanted to go home, so he didn't have to spend the night. And so just keep him in our prayers. He's 92. And he's a tough fella, though, I'll say that. And then on a lighter note, we won first place in our first annual pumpkin carving decorating contest, thanks to Karenis's son, Caleb. We got to go downstairs and look at the pumpkins, and we, the council, won first place for the carving part. And there's quite a few decorated ones, but you'll have to take a look at it. Karenis was pretty proud. So, anyway. All right, moving along to our agenda. We have section 1 is presentation, communication number 15-488. Karen Burns, Director, Butte-Silver Urban Revitalization Agency, to give a presentation on October 28th tonight regarding the marketing efforts and information related to the property at 40 East Broadway. We had to postpone that. Karen gave us a call to let us know that the individuals, I think Danny Kaluza and a couple others, just weren't quite prepared for this evening. They want to make it next week. And I believe Karen needs to send an email to that effect. Yes.
Madam Chair, it's actually November 10th, I believe.
Oh,
When they'll be giving the presentation.
okay. Well, I didn't know about that change. So, all right. Well, I will move it to November 10th. And as you know, we have both of our committee of the whole meetings are going to be on a Tuesday in November. So that looks odd. That's a Tuesday. All right. So we will just postpone that for now. All right. Section 2, presentation communication number 15-494. Danette L. Gleason, Director, Butte-Silver Finance and Budget Department, to give a presentation with Pat Callahan, Treasurer, on the acceptance of credit cards for payment of property taxes, motor vehicle licenses, and business licenses. Danette, the floor is yours.
Yep. Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you for your time tonight. Basically, we want to talk about the Treasurer's Office, but also wanted to come before Council and just kind of inform you as we start rolling out other departments using and accepting credit card payments for different types and various services. This was also a goal of the Chief Executive that was passed along to me to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the citizens and then also meeting the needs of the departments. The IT Advisory Committee held a meeting and a work session with many of the department heads and other elected officials several months ago. And from that meeting and the planning session that we had, a lot of it came from their needs of IT services. And one of them that hit the top of the list was they wanted to start accepting credit card payments and just needed the assistance from IT and the assistance from the Finance and Budget Department to start moving forward with that. So the Treasurer's Office came to the top of the list. They have a lot of variety of different types of payments that needed to be collected, and a lot of demand by the citizens of Butte-Silver that wanted to use credit cards for these type of payments. Eileen, thank you. The county attorney passed out for your presentation. I figure since we don't have a lot in the audience tonight that we'll just go through this PowerPoint quickly. Again, if you look to the second page of the PowerPoint presentation, it talks about where we currently have credit card locations in Butte-Silver Bow. Starting out is the online services. So you can see from the handout that we have some in the Civic Center, the Parking Commission, the Water Utility Division, the archives. We have burn permits, we have birth records, we have the City Court and Justice Court, and motor vehicle. So some of these have Elevon in parentheses next to them. Those are transactions that the local government handles. The other ones that have connections to the state are not directly impacted or directly flowed through the local government. We're kind of like a link to those sites, with the exception of like City Court, Justice Court. They just use a different provider, a different third-party servicer called Site Pay USA. And then the archives is a totally different format. They use a Square One. It's totally different from connection to our US Bank account. It's just an off product that they use through their Friends of the Archives and eventually rolls over to the archive services. Then in face-to-face transactions, we have just a few right now that we're accepting credit cards. That's at the Civic Center, Parking Commission, Water Utility Division, Health Department, Detention Center, and again, the archives. Just a little bit of general information about how credit cards work, because as we started to work and roll out the treasurer's office, I learned a lot of little elements about credit cards that I never really knew existed until we started this process. There's a lot of little costs that are associated with them that roll up to a larger cost when they're all combined together. The first cost is the equipment cost, and right now the equipment costs are $475 per unit. Those are the little units when you swipe your card in them, and now you have the little chips that everybody's rolling out, so everybody had to buy new units because now they have all these the new chip that's in everybody's credit card, so you have to have that ability as well. And those units are, like I said, are $475. They're special to each department, so we couldn't take one that's coded in the treasurer's office and use it in the Civic Center. They're coded by the merchant listing, the interchange fees that are all assessed. And so a service at the Civic Center is not the same as paying property taxes in the treasurer's office. So they're all coded differently and all unique to every department. There's the other costs associated with credit cards are interchange fees, assessments by the credit card companies, and then a bank fee. We'll go into a little bit of them, a little more detail here. So when we process a credit card as a local government, we have the three pricing components. Like I said, we have an interchange fee. The interchange fees are either a percentage or per item fee, and those are paid to the issuing bank. So the large banks that we have associated with our credit cards or our debit cards, they get an interchange fee. Then we have an assessment fee, which is also a percentage or per item fee, and that's paid to the credit card association member. So if your card's a Discover card, a Visa card, a MasterCard, so they get a fee. And then last and finally, you have a bank charge if you use a bank. We use US Bank, and they're partnered with Elevon, who does all the processing. They're considered what we call a third-party processor or a third-party administrator. So most of Butte-Silver Bow's departments that are currently accepting credit cards through Butte-Silver Bow use the third-party processor. And again, that's Elevon, because Elevon is connected with US Bank. The advantage of using a third-party processor is that they handle all the payments and the service fees or convenience fee of the credit card companies. So they're paying the banks, and they're paying the Discovers and the MasterCards and the Visas and everybody else that's in line for fees when you use a credit card. They also reconcile the transaction amounts. So any transactions that are being processed, they have to report those out. It's not on the local government to be reporting that out. We track it for our own internal purposes and our own revenue generating for taxes and whatnot and reconciliations. But on the hand, when it comes to any of those fees, those are away from us. If it's a use of Butte-Silver Bow employees' time to use a third-party processor, Eileen handed out to you another little piece of paper that I didn't keep one of them, but that's just one example from the banks of the fee schedule that our employees would have to be looking at. So that MasterCard is just the first page. That printout was like 22 pages long, I believe. Visa has their own, Discover has theirs. If we ever accept American Express, they all have their own. So it's more feasible for us to pay 0.5% of a transaction to a third-party administrator to administer all this instead of have somebody in the treasurer's office, a clerk in the treasurer's office, trying to fumble through what assessment they're supposed to be charging, because is the person's card a MasterCard or a Visa? And if it is, what kind of service? Was it a business license? Was it a property tax? Was it? So there's just a lot involved into processing them. It just makes sense and it's more feasible for us to use the third-party administrator. Again, the biggest part for us for using a third-party administrator is the assistance with compliance for federal and state regulations. We didn't have to worry about the fact that we had to get new machines. They told us we had to get new machines. We didn't have to be connected with the federal regulations. We didn't have to engage the county attorney's office and use their service and tie up their time on always trying to be compliant with all these changing regulations related to credit cards. So I'm always recommending using a third-party administrator, but I just want you to see that on the next page that there is other options. So like I had stated before, Butte-Silver wouldn't have to pay any or charge or assess any fees. So a person could come up and pay their taxes and Butte-Silver could eat the costs. However, definitely not economical. We couldn't do it. It just wouldn't work out for us because there's no other way for us to recoup the costs. We're a lot different than when you go down to your favorite restaurant in town and you use your debit card or your credit card to pay your bill. They get to add that on to their food. So somehow they're covering those costs. Unlike a local government, I can't add it on top. I can't have a special fund separated aside for out of tax supported monies or rate funds or whatever and set that money aside and say that I can use that for transactions. We can't do that as a local government. It's against the law. Next, we Butte-Silver ourselves could manage the interchange fees, the assessments, pay all the various bills like I talked about, try to keep up on compliance and whatnot, and pay and bear all the administrative costs. Again, not really practical. Because if you sit and look at some of the rate fees, I didn't give you any of the charts there that really relate to local government, but if you look at the fees and the structures, we're up to like 2.7, 2.6. And Discover, I think, was 2.4%. So we're only paying like less than 0.5% in some cases to a third party to take on and bear all those responsibilities. So again, if we do continue to use a third party administrator, our processing fees are 0.5% per the cost of the transaction. So it's the total cost of the transaction. On the next page, it just gives you, I gave you the scenario of a treasurer's office bill, some different treasurer's office bills. The first would be like a tax bill that goes out. First half payment might be $1,050. So if a person chooses to come in and use their credit card or their debit card, the associated fee is 3%, because remember, we got the interchange fee and the assessment fee from the credit card company and the small third-party fee. So that's a 3% fee when it adds up. So $1,050 tax bill would be about $31.50 fees associated with that. If you brought in a motor vehicle and you wanted to pay your licenses and it was $350, you'd pay $10.50 extra to use your credit card. Business license, if it was a $75 license, $2.25. Those are just 3 scenarios that I gave you just to kind of see what type of fees people are going to be paying if they use their credit card to make these payments. Customers will get 2 receipts. So first of all, their first receipt will come out and it'll be for their taxes or their motor vehicle or their business license. The next receipt that comes out is the fees that Elevon, which is the 3%, and it'll be in total of what they had to pay to use their credit card. Everything goes to Elevon, and then they wire the money to us for all the tax payments, motor vehicle payments, business licenses, and then they wire everything else to the other parties that are involved. I can tell you I did a little practice online today because I had one of my husband's and my son's hunting truck license plates came up. So I went online, and ours is connected to the state motor vehicle system. And I went online and I paid for the licenses, and I was charged 4.69% from them. So they have a floating structure. We've been able to work with US Bank and tie it down a little bit to where we're going to have a flat 3% fee. I'll let Pat talk a little bit about the treasurer's office and how he's moving forward with the treasurer's office.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have 5 motor vehicle clerks out front. They each need to have a processor. And then I have 2 desks that's on the back for property taxes, delinquent taxes, business license, and bringing permits, things like that. We'd have 2, so we were looking at a total of possibly 7. We possibly could get by with maybe 4 out front, but it would be very inconvenient for somebody to have to move over to another clerk to use their credit card if they wanted to use their credit card when all the girls are working. This will be new to all of us, so we all have to be trained on it and everything else, especially with making sure that they have proper ID to use it, and they have to have their PIN number, and they have to implement all of that just like you would at an ATM. Right now, our ATM is being filled twice a week because there's that much money. They come up, find out we don't take credit card, so they have to go over to the ATM, get the cash out to get money for their motor vehicle fees. I see probably majority of them credit cards will be on motor vehicle. There'll be a few that would want to pay smaller tax amounts with their credit card, but I said generally it'll be motor vehicle. And again, we will all have to learn the process and have it all available to us. The bookkeeping end of it, my bookkeeper will be receiving downloads on the computer, exactly what is charged on their credit card, and so that we can balance to the accounts. I'm kind of in the dark here. I've never used a processor before, so it'll be new to all of us. So hopefully we can learn it and continue on right away. We did try to start this over a year ago, but they had come out that the new card readers had to have this new chip ability, and if you bought the older sets, we would have had to replace them all. So that's why we held off, because as of October 1st of this year, the new card readers have to be implemented. So I don't know if anybody have any questions?
Any council members have any questions? Commissioner Morgan and then Commissioner Storage.
Thank you, Madam Shaw. Couple of questions that I have. This thing seems loud today. But first thing, Danette, would be the security of it. If we go with a third party, I would assume that most of the liability would be on their behalf, which I think is a huge thing. So if you want to answer that part.
Yep. Commissioner Morgan, that's correct. That relates to the compliance that I had bolded in red in the regulations and whatnot. I should have expounded on that a little bit more, expounded on it. But yes, definitely an advantage for us is that they take on all the security. So the big breach of security, like the targets and that we heard of, falls on them.
Good. And then what about the minimum charges? Are we going to set it up so people can't charge a 10-cent copy from the clerk and recorder's office?
So right now there's just a few things in the clerk and recorders mainly related to birth records. That's a $5 charge that they get. We haven't set up a minimum fee, minimum use fee. I don't think, we haven't even really discussed that, because the way that we're going to be set up is that, granted, we're going to pay the paper for the second receipt to come out if it's only a small fee that's charged, but they have to handle it.
Okay.
Commissioner Storage and then Commissioner Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I guess my question is, and I guess Commissioner Morgan kind of talked a little bit about it, but I realize our computer system is going to be upgraded. We budgeted for it, but is it going to handle it the way it is? It's like for the security and/or upgraded usage. Are we going to have to do anything prior to that?
Danette?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Sorch, good questions. Yes, we have a few wiring things that have to take place right now that the IT department's working on. It's nothing major. There was just some wiring because of the different type of device that's being installed.
Thank you.
Commissioner Henderson?
Madam Chair, Danette, could you explain one more time on the charge that the credit card company would charge for each transaction? So would that be an increase in whatever somebody's purchasing, for instance, the license plates and that? I missed that. I
Yep.
didn't hear it.
Danette?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Henderson, if you go back to the handout that has the treasurer's office with the schedule on it there. So if somebody came in, it's a 3% flat fee if they want to use the card. So if they came in with a tax bill of $1,050, they'd be charged $31.50 to use their credit card to make that payment. It's not, if we can move on, I'll move on just a little summary stuff. I might wrap up and then we can take some more questions.
Sure.
Okay. So I think it goes back to some of your questions, Commissioner Henderson. This has just been added as a convenience. We're getting asked the question, why are you doing this? It's a convenience for the citizens and for the business of Butte-Silver Bow. It has no bearing on, and we cannot, by law, the local government cannot generate revenue off of this. Another reason for a third-party administrator is we don't have to show that. They take all the money, they process it. All we get is the actual revenue we would have ever got. So we're only doing this for convenience. I think the Chief Executive's office, the Treasurer's office, many other departments throughout the local government get calls all the time and they get asked, why aren't you taking credit cards? We want to pay with credit cards, or we want to pay with a debit card, which we run as a credit card. And so the main reason is just a convenience. That's all we're adding this for. It has no revenue generator for the local government. We're not forcing citizens or businesses to use this. They can always pay by check, by cash. We're not forcing the use of it. We're not encouraging the use of it. We just want to give another option to the citizens because they've spoken and they've wanted this option.
What, follow up?
Commissioner Henderson?
Madam Chair, I think it's a great idea. I mean, no problem there. I didn't know that the law wouldn't allow any kind of an income from it, profit wise. So that's what I was questioning.
We will at everybody's desk in plain sight list the fees so that they're aware before they want to use their credit card, what kind of fee they're going to use or be charged, because their fee will be printed out separately from their actual tax. They'll actually get a separate receipt on the amount of the fee, so they'll know exactly what they paid.
Thank you.
Commissioner Palmer, then Commissioner Perdue-Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Danette, since they're going to be taking credit cards, will they be able to do it online?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Palmer. So you have two different, they're called MIDs. They're called merchant identification numbers. And so we applied and received and all the paperwork's in place. We're just waiting for the machines to come for the face-to-face transactions. The web-based ones take a little bit longer. We've applied for it. We're getting it set up. That probably is going to take a little bit longer. We're hoping that we'll have the machines and we'll be working within a 2-week period. The web-based one will probably be a month.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Perdue-Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pat, I have a question. You just said that you were going to put a disclaimer on or information to the taxpayer about the flat fee, so everyone's aware about the fee.
Right, in front of every clerk station, they'll be aware of the fees, so they know.
Could you also put with that some information about the security so they're aware about when you take on just the fact that Butte-Silver Bow is not, it's going to be a third party, so
Right.
they're aware of that?
Understand.
Just
We
FYI
could
for
do
them?
that. Yes, we could do that.
Thank you.
Madam
Sure.
Chair. Madam Chair, Commissioner Budell, and just so that we're clear on this, ours is not a flat fee. So he's not going to post up there that's a flat fee. He's going to post up there that it's a percentage, because there's a difference when you're doing them between a flat fee convenience structure, because only certain products can do that. Utilities can only charge a convenience flat fee, where local government for taxes and business license have to charge a service fee, which is a percentage fee. So it'll be a percentage. He's going to say a 3% charge is going to be added to your transaction.
Commissioner Anderson and then Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you very much, Chairman. You mentioned that you had a contract worked out with Elevon. Is that correct? And then I noticed that like the archives and a few of the other people are using different service providers, Square One, for example. Do we have to have a separate contract worked out with that, and do we have that done already?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Anderson, Elevon's is like an application process, so it does have a contract, but it's tied to our US Bank contract. The archives one, we're going to work on some of these other sites that are not using Elevon, because we need to be more comfortable with the fact of the security questions that were brought to us, because we're not sure of the how Square One's meeting compliance, for example. And so we're probably going to be moving or trying to move a lot of those others over to Elevon.
That was my main concern, is that with the different, it seems to me that they should all just be the same company, would just remove so many headaches from all parties involved.
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead,
Madam
Jeanette.
Chair. Commissioner Anderson, that's exactly right. It's always, if you can have one platform when you're doing something, one type of computer or whatever, it makes it all simpler. I think that people, when they were first able to just get accepting credit cards, they went however they could get it. And so now, as I've researched this for the Treasurer's Office and found exactly what's happening out there, we're going to go back and try to correct those problems.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Morgan?
Thank you. Danette, I don't know if we receive very many bounce checks, but will this integrate any new system into that? Kind of like some of the retail stores in Butte where you get your check back that same day?
Danette.
Commissioner Shaw. Commissioner Morgan. So I don't know, you mean as far as the bounce back if the electronic payment doesn't go through?
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that'll change that. And then, Pat, the only thing I was going to tell you or suggest is maybe instead of buying 7 machines, maybe try 2 and just have a sign that says, if you want to use a credit card, go to these 2 teller stations and then try that, just to see what our run is going to be on this. Because we may get a bunch or we may not, because you can already do it online through the states.
That'd be fine too. We just would have to put up signs that if you want to pay by credit card, you have to stay and go to this particular clerk.
Mm-hmm. You know somebody's not going to read the sign and they'll get to the front of the desk.
They could
would
be
be
neon flashing signs and they still don't read.
Commissioner Foley.
Just a quick question. I guess I had a comment that somebody asked me on, you just said today that you did the motor vehicle license on it. The question they asked me is, how do you get the sticker that you actually put on your license?
Commissioner Shaw, Commissioner Foley, I got to walk over to the Treasurer's Office, but no, they mail them. Okay. Yeah. What I found was complicated on the state side, just trying them. I tried a couple different applications and stuff. They at the very bottom, the way you know how much you're being charged is it just shows you the difference between my license plate fee and then what I'm getting charged on my credit card. It doesn't even like really explain anything on there. I actually went over to the Treasurer's Office and said, they didn't charge me a fee. And then I went back and looked at the receipt and it had 2 different numbers. That's how I knew I got charged it. Okay. But they send them out. They send the tabs out in the Treasurer's Office.
Okay.
Commissioner Fisher, then Commissioner McDonough.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's a great idea, I think, and I think the 3% fee is pretty good rate. I've dealt with these in the past, and I know people are paying, getting 4 and 5% out of them. The other comment I had is, if we start accepting credit cards, do you think there's a possibility that we could get a credit card for the county so that we don't have to have people using their own personal credit cards? to go on trips and do things like that.
Jeanette?
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, Commissioner Fisher, I hear you loud and clearly. I hear the Chief Executive weekly about getting that process started. Just a little bit on that, since we're bringing it up. There's a lot of policies that have to be implemented before I feel comfortable handing out credit cards and pushing out that process. Also, there's a lot of training involved because every department that is assigned a credit card also has to have a staff member that's fully trained. So when the transaction comes up daily, they're releasing it to us to then finally get reviewed and then go through the process. So there's some training elements as far as that goes. The big thing for me is getting all the right policies in place. So how do we correct abuse and what happens to people if there's abuse, or people do make mistakes and they grab their one card. What are we going to do about that? And we're working through it.
Commissioner McDonough.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My only comment was I think it's a great service to the citizens, and I'm sure Commissioner Henderson would agree that if you can pay your fees and taxes and earn sky miles for lavish trips, that it's a win-win for everybody. So I'm all in favor of it.
Okay, thank you. So we have a presentation, and I also agree that this is a great idea. We're really coming up to modern marketing and sales, like anybody else. Even though we're a county government, it's nice to have that convenience. I understand there's no money that we have to come up with ourselves. The initial equipment fee, is that the county? And whose budget does that come out of? And I think it came out for 7 units for Pat, it's like $3,375. So, how many of these units will there be out there in our county?
Madam Chair, so we did order 7 units for the Treasurer's Office. That doesn't mean they're coded for the Treasurer's Office, because then our IT department has to code them. So we can talk among the IT Advisory Committee a little bit and Commissioner Morgan about the number that we eventually code for the Treasurer's Office. But yeah, each unit right now will be $475. So we will be cautious about where we put them and how many we put where. Again, we did start with the roll. Like I said, some of the departments already have them. They're already using them. The Civic Center has high volume use. But like the Treasurer's Office or the Planning Department and, different other departments, how much are they going to use them? So we're going to be cautious about how many we put there. When we move to the planning department, we're going to put 1, and then we'll kind of roll them out cautiously.
Is there any follow-up expense or costs that might be incurred once we have the units? Let's say they have to be replaced, or I don't know how that works, but I'm concerned about the outlay for the county.
Commissioner Shaw, to my knowledge, the way it's been explained to me, the only additional cost would be if they ever change equipment again and we have to get new equipment, or the warranty wears out on some machine and we can't get it fixed and we have to buy a new one to replace it.
And purchase paper?
Oh, and the reader paper.
Reader paper.
Yeah.
And lastly, once again, whose budget will this be coming
sorry.
out?
It comes out of each department pays for their own. So the treasurer will pay for his machines, and then each department will have to pay for their own machine.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sorge.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. What about maintenance on these machines? I'm sure there's going to be some sort of maintenance where, like, you go to Safe, I'm assuming this is similar to Safeways or whatever. You go to Safeways, those machines aren't cleaned all the time, and your cards don't work. Is there going to be some maintenance to that type of?
Jeanette?
Commissioner Shaw, Commissioner Sorge, yes, there's small amounts of maintenance. Linda's team has been up to speed on it, just on the ones that we currently have. And then the Civic Center has rolled out new ones in their area, so they've been already working on them. When Linda and I were discussing about, do we buy 3 for the treasurer's office, and do we back the lines at the end of the month when everybody wants to come pay for their down the stairs, or how do we pay, and what's the cost association with maintenance and all that? It's pretty minimal. She said the machines that we're getting, they don't really seem to have a lot of problems with them. We'll see as they get more use.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you both. It sounds like a great service to provide. Does that begin right away? Or are you going to start the paperwork, so to speak?
Right. Commissioner Shaw, the paperwork's done. We're just waiting for the machines. When we first contacted them about 3 weeks ago to start moving it along, they've had a backlog of machines just because everybody had to implement new ones or was supposed to start to implement new ones on October 1st. So we're just waiting for the machines, and then it takes per machine about 2.5 hours. Linda thought 2 to 2.5 hours to code them and install them. So we're hoping within 2 weeks, the machines will be in.
Commissioner Purdue-Dolan.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I just had one question. You had the bold in red, assistance with compliance to federal and state regulations. Did you say how many pages that was? And I just had the comment of the burden of regulations to the not only the citizens of Butte-Silver Bow, but to the country. But how many pages was that?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Purdue-Dolan, it was,
Yeah.
I don't know. It was that there's pages and pages of different regulations. And if you're a local government charging for taxes versus a local government for a business license versus charging for an event at the Civic Center, and all different regulation related to utility and how you have to go through the processes. Yeah. So it's,
yeah.
And then the whole section, like Commissioner Morgan had brought up, there's a whole section deep on security and how you protect somebody's security. And
Good. Yeah, thank you. Sign of the times. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nanette and Pat. Looking forward to that. At this point in time, I ask for any public comment on any items that are on tonight's agenda. Any public comment this evening? Okay, seeing none. Section 3, communication number 15-8. Brendan McDonough, Butte-Silver Bow Commissioner, District Number 8, requesting the county attorney draft a vacant property registration ordinance for Butte-Silver Bow. With Brendan's indulgence, I was going to ask the county attorney if she could just give me a quick update on the status of that. And we briefly talked about it this afternoon.
Madam Chair, we're working on that and aim to get it submitted soon.
Okay, thank you. Section 4, communication 15-356, Kenneth and Michelle Palmer, 936 Zorelda Street, Butte, requesting council's authorization to purchase county-owned property under the adjacent landowner policy. This is Ken Palmer and his wife that have been trying to get this piece of land that's next to them, and it involves some county property. And we did send them a letter, and we asked them to put the bill for a survey. They seem to be amenable to doing that. And there will be some further review of the land by the county, but it looks like it's moving forward. I would like to continue to hold this in abeyance until a couple of those items have been taken care of. So we'll do that. Section 5, communication 15-415, Robert A. Makarowski, Director, Butte-Silver Bow Land Office, requesting council's authorization for the sale of county-owned property under the adjacent landowner policy for council to ask the county attorney to prepare the resolution and deed for the transfer of the property. This is the Klobakars. Again, a letter was sent to them as well by Lori Casey with several conditions that if they should wish to comply with the conditions, or there's a choice of an A and a B, that we would be happy to sell them the land. So we're waiting for them to come back with us with their reply. And we'll continue to hold that in abeyance. Section 6, communication 15-451, Pat Holland, Manager, Butte-Silver Bow Government Buildings, requesting council's authorization for a bid opening on October 21st, 2015 regarding the Business Development Center boiler replacement. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make a motion that we place communication 15-451 on file, being that we held that last week.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place communication 15-451 on file. Anything on the question? Commissioner Sorge?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I did talk to Pat Holland today, and he did say that they are working with the loan bidder to try to make this match closer to what the engineering estimate was. He said because there's no other, they're going to try to knock this, bring it down, but it was like 95,000 or whatever, but they're going to try
98,000 more, yeah.
So he says that they are working at it to try to get it closer to where that.
Thank you. Commissioner Henderson?
Madam Chair, could I ask the county attorney if that was to be rebid, if you you can rebid it as long as you change the specs. Am I correct?
County Attorney Joyce.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Henderson, yeah, you would, I'd have to look at the bid specification, but if it did authorize the city county to reject all bids, which it normally does, then we could reject the bid and rebid it. But typically, you'd want to have a different specification because you likely aren't going to get any new bidders if nothing's changed and you only got one the first time. And if you submitted in exactly the same form, you're likely not to get any additional bidders.
And I'd like to add that all we're doing here is we are placing on file the actual bid that took place. We will be getting a recommendation back from the Public Works Department and Pat Holland. So I think maybe the discussion would be better done at that time. We'll have an opportunity to decide if that's, I'm sure Pat will be looking to make sure they met all the specs, and maybe that'd be a good idea to do that. So.
Thank you.
So anything further in the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Section 7, Communication 15-455, Karen Sullivan, Health Officer, requesting council's authorization to establish Mental Health Local Advisory Council and ask the County Attorney's Office to prepare a resolution. That resolution was moved by the Judiciary Committee to final reading next week. So we will see how that comes out. And I don't think, unless anybody has any questions for Karen, that's where we are at this moment. And we'll cross-reference it with this communication at that time. Okay?
Why don't we cross-reference this with the
You want to do it
resolution?
now? All right. All right.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we cross-reference communication 14-455 with resolution 15-45 and place it on file.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to cross-reference communication 15-455 with resolution 15-45 and place it on file. Is there anything on the question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, David. Take one thing off this communication here. Section 8, communication 15-460, Blaine Brown, 132 West Woolman, Butte, Montana, requesting council's authorization to purchase city-owned property under the adjacent landowner policy. We have further down the way here, we have a letter asking us to approve the request. So I would ask Commissioner Morgan to cross-reference this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, I'll make a motion that we cross-reference communication 15-460 with communication 15-490 and place this communication on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to cross-reference communication 15-460 with communication 15-490 and place it on file. Is there anything on the question? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Section 9, communication number 15-461, Karen Burns, Community Development Director, requesting council's authorization to open the 2016 Economic Mill Levy Fund proposals on October 21st, 2015. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, I'll make a motion that we place communication 15-461 on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place communication 15-461 on file. Is there anything on the question? Commissioner Palmer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to say that the committee, Economic Development Committee, will start looking at these proposals and have Karen Issa will call probably 6 of them in on Monday at 6:30, and she'll come up with a schedule, but we'll be here in this council chambers and we'll start listening to the proposals at that time. It'll be Monday and Tuesday of next week. And we'll have a schedule that's put out, but that's when we'll start interviewing the proposals.
Okay. Anything further on the question? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Section 10, yes, Section 10, communication 15-462, Lori Casey, Assistant Planning Director, Butte-Silver Planning Board, requesting council authorize a public hearing regarding zone change application number 173 on October 21st, 2015. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make a motion that we place communication number 15-462 on file, being that we held the public hearing last week.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place communication 15-462 on file. Is there anything on the question? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Section 11, communication 15-488. Karen Burns, Director, Butte-Silver Urban Revitalization Agency, to give a presentation on October 28th, 2015 regarding the marketing efforts and information related to the property at 40 East Broadway. This presentation will be given jointly by Northwestern Energy and Butte-Silver, and we have moved that to 11:10. We'll postpone this meeting until that date. So we'll continue to hold that in advance. Section 12, communication number 15-490. Karen Burns, Director, Butte-Silver Community Development Department, requesting council's authorization to approve council communication 15-460, requesting request from Blaine Brown to purchase city-county property under the adjacent landowner policy. There has been a letter sent to Mr. Brown as well, and he will, he's being asked to do the survey on his own. He's also given an option if he does not like the DOR's recommendation that he could have an appraisal done on his, he would have to pay for it. So we're waiting for his response. And once we do that, then we can move forward with a resolution and deed. So I'll hold that in abeyance until such time that we get that information. Section 13, communication number 15-494, Danette L. Gleason, Director, Butte-Silver Finance and Budget Department, to give a presentation with Pat Callahan, Treasurer, on the acceptance of credit cards for payment of property taxes, motor vehicle licenses, and business licenses. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make a motion that we place communication 15-494 on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place communication 15-494 on file. Is there anything on the question? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. At this time, I would call for any public comment on any public matter that was not in tonight's agenda. Ed?
However, Banner Road 2601 Grand Avenue. Relative to community councils, which is not on the agenda this evening. I believe it is time for a review, and a few reminders. You said you are offended by my accusation that this council is ignoring the constitutional law of the city-county charter. What about myself? The 237 signatories of the petitions, or petitions if you prefer, and the rest of the people of the city-county of Butte-Silver Bow. Do you not think they are offended? By your ignorance of the law? As I stated last week, the petitions make no statement about the council ignoring the law. The statement is in the survey and from my comments to this council. I don't appreciate being called a liar. As to this council being insulted by the inference that you are ignoring the law, as stated previously, you may be trying to fool the people into thinking that you are following the letter of the law, but you are most definitely ignoring the spirit and the intent of the law. And the people are just as insulted by that ignorance as you are by my comments. I no longer believe that you are even following the letter of the law. I see a long list of ordinances and resolutions in the minutes of this council, but I do not remember in the 4 years or so that I have been sitting in the audience that this council once stating, you, citizen group, cluster, organization, is hereby authorized to, as a blank, whatever it is, community council, to confer, deliberate, and reach a common consensual policy advisory recommendation and report back to this council. If you are not ignoring the constitutional law of the city county, then show me the signatories of the petitions and the people of this county in the minutes of this council where you have authorized a community council. Show the signatories of the petitions and the people of this county a list of community councils that you have authorized to advise this council of commissioners. Maybe we need to define the word advise. Yes, I have seen clusters of groups and organizations of citizens come before this council to comment on the public matters not on the agenda, to register their concerns and complaints, and or advocate for a specific cause or issue. But in the last 4 years or so, I have never heard the phrase, I move to refer this to the blank community council to form. Is this so funny? I don't believe it is so funny. To form a community council advisory policy recommendation and report back to this council. I would like to remind this council that the people did come before this council. 3 listening sessions were held by your Rules Committee and were attended by 15 to 20 people at each of those sessions. And these people were from 5 to 6 different neighborhoods. I would like to remind this council that this body voted 9-1 with 1 absent to concur with the Rules Committee's recommendation based on the no cost to the public taxpayer 3-page proposal that the people requested. Then after the confusing 13-page, $100,000 a year red line modification was introduced by the executive branch of this government, but was never included in the ordinance, the council voted 8-4 to deny the proposed ordinance based on the Rules Committee's original recommendation. The recommendation the people had supported. What's the use for the people to come before this council until this council has a change of attitude? Must I remind you again that nowhere other than in the powers and duties of the Council of Commissioners is the term community councils referred to in the city-county charter. This is strictly an issue between the people and their elected legislative representatives. Do I have to remind you that during the discussion of the interpretation of the city-county charter, the city-county attorney clarified that the charter does not refer to neighborhood councils, but to community councils. Thus, this initiative is now about community, people with common concerns, not neighborhoods, people who live in the same geographic area. Do I have to remind you that the city-county attorney communication to this council states, quote, when the legislature has not defined a statutory term, unquote, it infers that the legislature has the power to define the meaning the people are calling for in the petition, or petitions if you prefer, is for this legislature to define the term authorized as, and I quote, calling for, authorizing, and recognizing, unquote. Do I have to remind this council that the city-county attorney clarified during the discussion that the term neighborhood is defined in Montana law, but the term community is not, that it is, quote, the function or responsibility, unquote, of this body to define that term and the request of the signatories of the petitions, if you prefer, is for this council to also define the rules and/or procedure by which this council will call for, authorize, and recognize common concern community councils. As with the executive branch, ad hoc committees, there should be little or no additional cost to the taxpayers for these community councils. Why not create formalized procedural rules for this council to use to put out a call for the business community to come before the Economic Development Committee? Why not create formalized procedural rules for members of this council to use to request that this council put out a call from this council of commissioners for the festival community to form a community council to advise these council commissioners? Why not create formalized procedure and rules to encourage citizens and/or this administration to use to request that this council put out a call from the Council of Commissioners for a community-wide wellness and well-being community council to advise this Council of Commissioners? Why not create a formalized procedure and rules to encourage citizens and/or the administration to put out a request for a West Park Street Enhancement Community Council to bring to this council a consensual advisory recommendation? Then this council would have some consensual input from the community on which to be able to make decisions before referring majority policy issues to the executive branch.
Ed, excuse me 1 minute.
Madam Chair, I think we've heard for 3 minutes.
I raised a point of order. You allowed the person 15 minutes at last week's meeting. I
There is
call
no
that
law that,
discrimination.
there is no law that defines the amount of time, but Ed, if you could wrap it up, we'd really appreciate
I've
it.
got three more words and I will be done. Thank you. To work with the administrator to implement and report back to this council their final improvement. That, Commissioner Soares, is the procedure that the charter calls for.
Any further comment from anyone regarding anything that's not on tonight's agenda? Sir, would you just give us your name and address for the record?
My name is Kenneth Park at 3080 Hecla. Madam Chair, Commissioners, first I'd like to say that you guys have done a great job of resurfacing the streets of Butte that you've got done at this point, especially Cobbin and Farragut. I drive those every day. It's nice to have a smooth transition. Secondly, I would like to make a suggestion that if you would like to keep these streets in good shape, I would recommend that you stop using road graders for snow removal. If you don't understand the engineering design of a road grader is designed to specifically to flatten and level the surface being graded. When the ground freezes beneath the roads allow the pavement to move, and usually it moves up or down. This is called a frost heave. If any of you guys have driven down concrete highways, you notice about every 50 feet that your car is plunking along because they deliberately put frost heaves in the concrete to allow that to move. When the road grader catches the frost heaves during the snow removal, it flattens the road, which means it removes pieces of pavement, creating potholes. The pothole repairs that I've seen this spring were not quality work. I believe because Butte-Silver now has their own pavement facility, it's a new concept for local government to try to do this. I have a friend that was hired, and his first day on the job, I seen him out filling potholes, bringing a hole that's 2 inches deep to 3 inches above the surface really doesn't create any smoother ride on your suspension in your vehicle. And as a mechanic, I appreciate the work that it's creating for me, but I wrote this out so I could stay on track. If snow plows were used, like you see with the county, state, and I guess I should say state, not county, but state trucks and pickup snow plows, blades are designed to, when they hit something hard, they'll either fold or they'll rise up and glide over the pavement and not cause damage to the road surface. I myself own a snow plow and have used them for years. I realize it's probably too late to consider this for this coming winter season since we're having snow right now. But hopefully it's something you guys would consider in the future. And I think it would be a much more effective use of taxpayer money to purchase snow plows than painting bicycle lanes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else care to make a comment that's on anything that's not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none. Anything else to come before us tonight? Ladies and gentlemen, Commissioner Purdue-Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank the Chief Executive for coming down to the mall earlier this afternoon for Butte Cares event, our Mission Possible event for drug prevention and drug, alcohol, and tobacco prevention. He did a proclamation, and it was well received. We had a great turnout earlier this evening. I of course had to leave early, but we had a great turnout, and I just wanted to thank the Chief Executive for opening up the event and just let everyone know it was a great turnout of young people. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else to come before us? Commissioner Morgan.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. We have a motion and second to adjourn. All in favor? Aye.